Hello dear students, welcome to the Bajirao IAS Academy. Today is 9th November and we are going to discuss the daily Hindu newspaper analysis. So today we have two articles in discussion. The first article is related to E-FIR. Well, you know about FIR, First Information Report. But how to file FIR? Well, you will visit the police station for a complaint, you will register the complaint, and the police officer will write the complaint via FIR, which we call as first information report. Then investigation will start. That is the procedure. But when we talk about E-FIR, you know that due to the introduction of digitization and technology, the traditional means will be going to be shifted, and that's why we are approaching towards electronic filing. That means filing the FIR via online portal. It is similar like when you file the income tax online. Okay, so filing the complaint online or filing FIR online, that will be discussed in this article. What are certain issues, okay, and what suggestion the article is giving about, we will be discussing in detail. The second article is related to the climate change. When we talk about climate change, it is a reality, okay. And one question I want to ask you, which country gets affected most, whether the developed nation or the developing nation? Well, developing nation. But when we talk about historically who is responsible for this climate change, you will answer the developed nation. Yes. So that means there is a necessity that the developed nation should take the responsibility to protect the developing nation. But how they will protect? By giving financial aid, by giving financial support, so that the developing nation can transit towards more greener and inclusive pattern. Okay. But with respect to the financial distribution or the financial devolution, when we talk about agreement, there is agreement done. But when we talk about devolution, actual devolution, the fund gets stuck. Okay, so that is the point. And here we will be talking in the context of loss and damage fund. Okay, and this is not only important for the prelims, it is also important for the mains. Okay, and this type of question do reflect in the UPSC mains examination. So we will be understanding in a detailed way. Let us start our discussion with prelims rapid fire. So here we on the daily basis try to discuss one prelims previous year paper, okay, which are more recent in nature. So that will help to analyze you the type of questions UPSC is asking, the shifting pattern about the question, the topic priority which you need to focus. Okay, so you should solve the question, you pause the video, try to answer the question in the chat box. Okay, so the question is, consider the following heavy industries: fertilizer plants, oil refineries, steel plants. The green hydrogen is expected to play a significant role in decarbonizing how many of the above industry. So first of all, to answer the question, you need to understand about the green hydrogen. Okay, and for this type of question, you can break the term green hydrogen. That means hydrogen will be produced from green sources, and green source comes from where? Renewable energy. Okay, so if hydrogen is produced from renewable energy, that means it is green hydrogen. And the above three terms or the industries which is given is like heavy industry first of all, and the second, these are carbon intensive industries. Okay, so that means if we use green hydrogen, so which industries will be expected to decarbonize? And you have to answer whether it is only one pair is correct, only two pair is correct, or all three, or none. Okay, and try to answer. I have given the clue. Okay, so explore about green hydrogen in much more detailed way, because these are the terms and associations are coming into the news frequently because of the climate change issue and all of that. Okay, and it is not surprising that UPSC is asking about green hydrogen in more frequent way. Like this year in 2023 itself, the question about green hydrogen was asked 2 times. Okay, so be alert on these current developments. Okay, so we will be providing you the answer in the last session of the discussion, and we will be also elaborating much more detail about green hydrogen. Okay, so let's start our analysis discussion. So first of all, when we talk about the FIR registration, FIR stands for what? First Information Report. And for an FIR, you have to visit the police station and the officer will register the complaint, and after registration of FIR, the investigation gets started. Okay, this is the procedure. But when we talk about E-FIR, so these process will be going to be digital. Okay, and for that various committee and commissions are getting set up. Okay, for analyzing and understanding the implications, the barriers and all of that. Okay, and do remember that some of the states do had implemented the E-FIR system. Okay, and what are other issues and challenges, they have been highlighted in a report which was recently released by Law Commission of India. So first of all, we will understand all these discussions in detail. Okay, so when we talk about the report of Law Commission of India, so Law Commission of India in report number 282, they recommended that in case of the accused is not known, the registration of an E-FIR should be allowed for all cognizable offense. Wait for the cognizable offense and non-cognizable offense differences. Okay, we will be understanding that. And the second, when we talk about accused and versus convicted, what is the difference? So accused is basically charged of the case, but the verification of the charge against the accused has not been done. Okay, because of lack of evidence. And when we talk about convicted, that means verification of charge has been done and the person will pay the fine or will go into the jail. Okay, will get the punishment. Okay, so these are the difference between the convicted and the accused. Okay, so in case of the case where the accused is not known, the E-FIR should be registered for all cognizable offense. Okay, and let's say if the accused is known, okay, E-FIR may be allowed for cognizable offense, but the punishment provided under the IPC is up to the 3 years. Okay, and when we talk about the verification of the complaint, suppose a complaint, a person try to register try to register complaint online. Okay, so how the identity of the complainant will be verified? Maybe there can be fake person registering the complaint to divert the matter. Okay, so these are the system that can go in the digital situation. So to mitigate the cyber related issue, the verification needs to be done about the complaint. So there can be a system of mobile OTPs. Okay, and along with validating the ID proof for that complainant. Okay, like Aadhaar. Okay, so that is the point. Now we are coming to cognizable versus non-cognizable offense. What is the difference? So remember for the prelims as well, because this type of dynamic political questions are getting asked. Okay, you can see the UPSC 2022 paper trend, 2023 paper trend. Okay, so when we talk about cognizable offense, these are the offense under which a police officer can arrest without an arrest warrant. So without an arrest warrant, the police officer can arrest. That means these offense are of serious in nature. Okay, you can take the example like murder, like rape, like dowry death. Okay, so these can come under cognizable offense, that means serious offense. And here a police officer can investigate without the magistrate permission. But in case of non-cognizable offense, these are non-serious nature. Okay, like cheating, forgery, defamation. So these are non-serious nature of case, and they requires an arrest warrant. Okay, for arresting the person. And in order to start the investigation, it is important for the police officer to obtain the commission from the permission, basically from the magistrate. That's the difference. Okay, so now you have to understand basics about the process of E-FIR. Okay, so in the process of E-FIR, what will happen, that there will be online complaint registration system. Okay, and in this online complaint registration system, a complainant will file the complaint. Okay, and that complaint will be delivered to the designated police station. Okay, and after that, the duty of police officer starts. What's the duty? First of all, the police officer will try to segregate whether the offense is cognizable or non-cognizable. Okay, and if it is like non-cognizable, that means the person needs to visit the police office. But in case of the cognizable offense, okay, so there is another segregation, like if the punishment term is more than 3 years or less than 3 years. Okay, so if it is less than 3 years, they will try to initiate the proceedings. Okay, and when we talk about cognizable offense but punishment is more than 3 years, then the traditional approach will be followed. What is the traditional approach? The person, the complainant, needs to visit the police station, and manually FIR should be written. Okay, so that is the important scenario. And when we talk about the complaint, let's say if registered, okay, so to be qualified as an FIR, the complainant needs to visit within 3 days after registering the complaint in the portal. So that is the important thing you need to understand, that a complaint, let's say, filed online, but for converting it to an FIR, there is a need for the complainant to visit the police station for signature within 3 days. So that is the point, and that is also one of the hurdles that will limit the efficacy of the E-FIR system. Okay, so that's the concern. Hope you understood. So we will be talking about the negatives and positives of this recommendation given by the Law Commission. So first of all, the online facility will have only limited efficacy. Why? Because a person needs to visit within 3 days of the complaint to qualify the complaint registered online as an FIR. Okay, so that's the first important thing. And the second important thing, that if the actual FIR, which will be converted from complaint, okay, before the actual FIR conversion, the investigation will not be done in true spirit of the code of criminal procedure. Okay, but there will be a certain benefits, like police have to take the cognizance of the complaint. That means more accountability to the police officer, and that will ensure that no illegal registration fee or the charges can be taken out. Okay, and there will be also no change to the content of the complaint, because these all will be digitized, so the content will be remain compact. Okay, so that's the thing, that's the positive things. So there is a suggestion given in this article. First of all, the Law Commission, which has recommended that E-FIR for all cognizable offense where the accused is not known. Okay, but here in this type of case, human intervention is crucial. Why human intervention is crucial? Because here the accused is not known. So to investigate the case, there is a necessity that the police officer will need to explore the details, will need to explore and analyze the facts, some of the evidence that may be put out, and for that more deliberate and discussions with respect to the complainant, with respect to the victim, will help to advance more detail with respect to the accused person. Okay, that means interaction with a police officer is valuable in solving the blind crimes. And blind crime means what? The accused is not known. Okay, so that means a very important suggestion. But also there is one important suggestion, like we are introducing E-FIR system, but that should not enable that a person will not able to visit the police station for writing down the complaint. Why? Because many of the people are not digitally literate. Okay, so for them there is a need to visiting the police station physically. So that's an important suggestion. And the legally permissible period of 3 days that we have talked, like it is also very too long, and in this period maybe the case can be affected. Okay, and there can be a delay in the justice. So that's an important point. And now next comes about the e-authentication technique. So what we have told you, that for conversion of online complaint into an FIR, there is a need of the complainant to visit manually to the police station for the signature. Okay, so that limits the efficacy of the E-FIR. So here the suggestion is that e-authentication techniques should be explored. And what do you mean by e-authentication technique? Like a digital signature, okay, for signing the documents, the complaints digitally, so that they can be converted into an FIR. Okay, otherwise it can be like e-authentication technique using Aadhaar eKYC services, it can also be there. Okay, and via this the complaint will be converted into FIR as fast as possible. Okay, but not providing the e-authentication technique will be a limitations to the E-FIR. That is the important suggestion which has been highlighted in this article. Okay, and that's why e-authentication technique should be mandated for the complaint verification to register the FIR immediately. And you can see here e-authentication technique like fingerprint sensor, all of that. Okay, and there can be like Aadhaar eKYC verifications. So that is an important thing. Hope you understood all the context, all the suggestions and examples. Okay, and tell me which state has adopted E-FIR system. Tell me, please do count, please do try to search into the internet. Okay, this will help you to decode some more data and important facts. So now we are shifting to the second article, and the second article is related to GS paper 3. Okay, and when we talk about this article is about climate change and the vulnerabilities faced by the developing nation, the poorer nations. Okay, so climate change is a reality, and when we talk about the reality, it means these are impacting the lives of the people, the lives of the vulnerable people, the poorer section. Okay, who historically emitted the greenhouse emission. It was developed nation, industrialized nation like US, okay, like the UK, Australia, all of that. But who is impacting the most? The poorer nations, the south of the globe, or we can say the global south, because the global south represent the developing nations. Okay, and because of that their lives are getting impacted. Okay, so you can see the impact of climate change in the form of glacier melting, in the form of extreme weather events like cyclones, okay, and wildfires, along with high temperature, okay, and water crisis, extreme floodings, extreme drought. All of these we are seeing, and the impact is much more on the poor and developing nation. So despite they are not historically responsible, but they are facing the huge crisis due to the climate change. Okay, and when we talk about the developed and industrialized nation, you can see into the map the blue color represents the developed and industrialized nation. Okay, so this should be made responsible for this issue, okay, for the climate change. So This principle was adopted in the common but differentiated responsibility. What do you mean by common but differentiated responsibility? We have the common goal to combat climate change, but the responsibility should be different. The responsibility should be more on the developed nation and less on the developing nation, because developing nation historically is not responsible, but they are vulnerable, they have less fund, they have less technology to mitigate, to adapt to the climate change. Okay, so that means they should be more made more responsible. Okay, and what the developed and industrialized nation can do to combat this challenge? First of all, they need financial support to be given to the developing nation or the vulnerable nations, like we are highlighting here in the map. Okay, so financial support should be given by the developed nation to the developing countries, so that they can adopt the technology, they can deal with the climate crisis. Okay, but when we talk about the financial support, there are only talks, there are only dialogues, but no devolution in an actual way. Despite the UNFCCC was established in 1992, United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, and that all talked about the responsibility of developed nation to cater the need of the developing nation with respect to the impact of climate change. But the financial support was only in terms of a statement, not in terms of actual devolution. Okay, so only dialogue baji. Okay, and one such initiative is loss and damage fund. So one such initiative was taken to ensure that developed nations should provide the financial support. It was like creation of loss and damage fund, but these loss and damage fund is only in paper, not in actual reality. And what do you mean by loss and damage fund? Here the rich country must support in terms of financial support to the lower income countries for the loss and damage caused due to the climate change. And what do you mean by loss and damage? So loss and damage are the impacts done due to the climate crisis that cannot be avoided, okay, or mitigated through the adaptation efforts. And these laws are real laws, okay, and they are facing the human rights, and they will affecting the well-being of the people. And when we talk about the impact of loss and damage fund, so this is not only the economic loss but human casualty, okay, and a degradation of ecosystem, the cultural heritage. We have seen the pictures above in the slide. Okay, so that means the impact of loss and damage is going to be enormous. Think about the island nations. Okay, how they will be impacted if glaciers are melting too fast, the rise in the sea level, and the island may get submerged. Okay, think about the land degradation due to climate change, the decrease in the quality of land. It will increase the food insecurity, and who will face the blunt? The developing nation. Okay, so these loss will be real, these loss cannot be mitigated. So the loss and damage fund will help to advance the needs of the developing and the vulnerable countries. Okay, so when we talk about the origin of loss and damage fund, so the base pillar of this fund is associated with the historical accountability of the developed nation with respect to the contribution to the climate change. Okay, and when we talk about the origin, so first of all, the talks about loss and damage fund was started in COP 19, that means Conference of Party 19 of the UNFCCC, and here they formally agreed to establish the loss and damage fund. Here they agreed, but actual way it was not established. And this fund was aimed to provide financial and technical assistance to economically developing nation. Okay, and then we have the COP 16, Conference of Party 26, and it was in Glasgow. And here Glasgow dialogue on finance for loss and damage was established to continue discussions about this fund. Okay, and in COP 27, intense negotiations was there with respect to the loss and damage fund, and here members agreed to set up the loss and damage fund and transitional committee. Okay, so here there was an agreement to set up L&D, and also with L&D there was an establishment of transitional committee. But what the function the transitional committee will do? So the transitional committee was aimed to figure out the funding mechanism, from where the fund will come, okay, who will contribute and who will operate. So these were the problems that was needs to be solved out by this transitional committee. Along with, it was given additional responsibility to prepare recommendations that countries would consider and potentially will be adopted by COP28. But the issue remained in this transitional committee as well, as there was not too close negotiation between the developing nation and the developed stakeholder. Okay, and for that, 4 meetings of the transitional committee was concluded, but no clear recommendation. But why there was the no clear recommendation created or provided via this transitional committee? Because there was contention of issue between the developed and developing nation. Okay, like who will host the fund. A suggestion was that World Bank will hold the fund, but World Bank has another issue. We will be discussing all of that. Okay, along with the foundational principle of common but differentiated responsibility, there is a issue about it. Climate reparations, and along with the eligibility of all developing nations, whether all the developing nations will be included into the loss and damage fund, or the most vulnerable and developing nations will be included. For example, when we talk about China, okay, so China is called as developing nation, but when we talk about its economy, okay, their financial backup, so China is much ahead. So whether China and similar countries will be included under loss and damage fund, so there was a contention. Okay, so that is also one of the contention. So that's why an extra meeting, an exceptional meeting of the transitional committee was organized. That was called as transitional committee 5. Okay, before that 4 transitional committee meeting was occurred. But in this extra transitional committee 5 meeting, developing nations conceded to the fund that it will be hosted by World Bank. It will be under the auspices of World Bank financial intermediary fund for an interim period of 4 years. Okay, but there are other concerns, like World Bank is yet to confirm that it will host the fund. Okay, and other problems with respect to World Bank, like it charges an exorbitant overhead fee. Okay, along with, when we talk about the role of US, the role of US is very important in deciding factor that climate change issue will be resolved or not, because US gives fund. Okay, US currently leads the world, and if the US has a support over this type of issue, that means the world will cooperate to tackle the climate change. But here the US has remained non-committal about being the primary donors in this fund. So they only talking about the voluntary support, okay, not the mandatory support. And also there are other issues like no indication of the size of the fund. Okay, so these are the issue, hence issue remained unresolved, and this highlights the lack of trust between the developed and the developing economies regarding their historical responsibility. And when we talk about the negotiations with respect to the climate change, so in this type of scenario we are seeing that the negotiations are getting hampered, and cooperative spirit that should be reflected in these type of issue are not getting reflected, and that will necessarily affect the issue of climate change. Okay, and who will burn the coast? The developing and the vulnerable nation. Okay, and when we talk about the implications of these outcomes, these decisions, it has a catastrophic implications. Okay, not only to the developing nation, but the implications will be felt by the developed nation, because we are a globalized world. Okay, we are living in a globalized economy where economy is integrated, where society is being integrated. Okay, where threat in one country is getting reflected in the another country. Talk about Russia-Ukraine war, talk about the Israel-Palestine crisis. Okay, so what is happening? The impact of these two regional nations have a repercussions in the other nations. Similarly, take an example of climate change. If there is a food shortage, let's say in Canada or the Russia, so Russia will not import wheat. Russia will not export wheat, and Russia exports many much percentage of wheat specifically to the developing nation. Okay, so that means the crisis of food security will occur. Okay, so that's the point. So it threatens climate justice and exaggerates the suffering of vulnerable community, along with increase the number of humanitarian crises like forced migration we see in the images. Okay, because of the drought conditions, because of the excessive flood we see in the India as well. Okay, you can take the example of the recent forced displacement because of the excessive cyclone, because of the excessive flood. Okay, all of that, and we have economic consequences. Okay, and we have the limited capacity to address the environmental degradation, specifically the developing nation. Okay, and this will lead to the loss of vital ecosystem. For example, if fund will not come to the developing nation will start like using the fossil fuel. Okay, will not cater the need of the climate change, will do their developments as they want. So this will negatively affect the climate, and that means the climate change. Okay, so climate change induced instability will also rise and can have a security implications, and the implications can be spread to the neighboring countries, and tensions will emerge. For example, in India, we can take the Kaveri water dispute. Okay, so Kaveri water dispute is the outcome of what? Because in Kaveri, sometimes there is less rainfall, there is more rainfall. So if there is a less rainfall, that means the disturbing issue between the Karnataka and Tamil Nadu will start rising. There will be blame game. Okay, so that's the point. Hence, there is a conclusion like the adaptation and loss and damage are not mutually exclusive concept. They are inclusive. One impact the other. Adaptation will impact the loss and damage, and loss and damage will impact the adaptation. Okay, and that's why there is a need to have a proactive measures of adaptation along with moral and financial responsibility of the developed nation to address the loss and damage. And here each country must meet their obligation to reduce emissions and deliver finance. Otherwise, what we are aiming for to deal with the climate change will not help to cater the climate change need. Okay, so that's the point, and global action is needed, global support is needed, cooperation is needed to these type of global issue. Remember, when we talk about any of the global issue, the global support is needed, and who is impacted most? The vulnerable and the developing country. Okay, and if the developed nation have a upper hand toward the contribution, okay, so we can handle the problem in a good way, because the developed nation can provide technology, can provide fund, can have an upper edge support. Okay, so that's the point, and that's the issue why we are not able to deal with the climate change. Only dialogue we do, but not the solution. Okay, so here there is end of the article, and we are shifting to the prelims answer. So the answer of the question is all the three options. Okay, so these heavy industry, whether it is fertilizer, oil refinery, steel plant, these requires huge electricity, huge energy. Okay, when we talk about a steel plant, they require huge coal. Okay, oil refinery, fossil fuel, fertilizer plant, fossil fuel. Okay, coal, these are required. So green hydrogen can provide energy in terms of renewable energy, and that will help to decarbonize this sector. Okay, and how the green hydrogen work? So we told you that in case of green hydrogen, the energy generates from renewable source, and the renewable source can be the solar plates or the wind energy. Okay, and here the energy which gets generated goes to the electrolyzer, because electrolyzer requires energy so that the water H2O should be spread into H2 plus O2. Okay, and here hydrogen is extracted and stored, and then can be utilized for aeroplanes or the aviation sector, the chemical manufacturing, or the shipping purpose. Okay, so that's the end of the article. Hope you understood. If you enjoyed the article, please do like, share, subscribe. Thank you, friends. Thank you very much for the discussion.